everything goes our way. Why? Because our friend Michael Urie is back in studio to talk about his new show, Shrinking, on this episode of Texas Whiskey.
Everything goes our way.
Welcome to this episode of Texas Whiskey. My name is Jimmy Hayes Nelson, a.k.a. Coach Jimmy. To my right is the doctor, Dr. Nico Martini, and sandwiched in betwixt us is our friend Michael Urie. Welcome back.
I'm not a coach or a doctor. I'm just me.
Do we need a nickname for?
I'm not a lawyer, but I play one on TV. How about?
Did you ever have a nickname growing up?
Have you always?
I never really had a nickname.
Spike.
Have you dreamed of just having that in your back pocket at some point?
But I'm not a lawyer.
I'm not a lawyer.
Just play one on TV.
It's fun to play a lawyer. I never played a lawyer before. I don't think, but I had like a real lawyer scene on the show.
Do you have any more? I mean, not spoiler alert, but like, do you get to lawyer later?
I'm an estate lawyer, so yes, but it's kind of
weird.
It's boring. I mean, it's not boring. It's just like estate stuff. But I mean, when is this coming out? When will this be? When will people see this? Can I spoil something?
Next week.
Sure.
You tell. When can we air this? Yes.
Well, I think this week you find out that I'm Harrison Ford's estate lawyer.
Oh.
Yeah. That's not a spoiler. It's
No, but
not
it's
a big deal,
this is why you check in. You get a little teaser.
Yeah, but it's really cool. I got to have scenes with him. It was very cool.
That's cool, and we will get to that shortly because I have lots of questions when it comes to Mr. Harrison Ford. Would you like to drink some whiskey before we talk?
Let's start with the Scotia of whiskey because we're far too dry in these cups. Dr. Urie. I'm sorry, not Dr. Lawyer Urie.
Lawyer Urie, yes.
Esquire.
Urie Esquire. What did you bring, Jimmy? Because we just kind of I just sort of grabbed the things that I'm keeping at the studio.
I brought Lineage, the single malt that we started the entire show with. I brought Lead Belly, which this bottle is still closed, but you've always told me it drinks like an Irish whiskey.
It does.
And then I brought the Hazmat from Iron Root that is a whopping 141 proof because, why not?
Wow.
It's kind of a 2-for-1.
Yeah, but it's a corn whiskey, right?
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
So that the Deep Ellum one is kind of interesting. I need to have a conversation with them. Deep Ellum Brewery.
Yep.
They grew incredibly quickly, and they a very, very, very successful company. So and in the midst of this, just beer, they're just beer everywhere. They decided, okay, let's do the distilling thing. We have half of what we need. Let's let beer, and there's a very much of a growing trend of breweries that go into distilling. Real Spirits from Blanco is one of my favorite ones.
When you say they have half of what they need, you mean
to make. Yeah,
because they make beer. They have
yes.
Oh, and
so whiskey starts with beer. Essentially, you could go grab a 6-pack and distill it, and you will be making whiskey effectively.
I had literally.
Neither did I before I started the show. The things that I've learned in 2 years is whiskey starts as beer.
That is
never knew that.
Crazy. I had no idea.
Right.
Yeah. Your listeners are probably like, "Who is this guy?"
Right. Thanks for tuning in. So when you have a brewery, if you want to go that way, you have an opportunity to let's take one of our beers and distill it. And so a lot of beer has hops in it, and you don't necessarily want to distill hops. So if you're going to take a produced beer and start distilling it, it usually ends up being a stout because it's kind of that's where the big flavor is, and we don't want to start with something light and then distill it and make it lighter and yada yada. And so you'll usually find like Scotch ales or stouts, and those are the types of things that are usually distilled. Wow. So if the brewery isn't necessarily into that, they might not even necessarily go there. But there's a lot there's some really cool stuff happening from breweries that are starting to move into whiskey. Gotcha. And Deep Ellum did this. They decided.
Should I open this while you're talking about it? We've gone this far down the
it's a very odd story. They hired this dude named Reed, who I forget Reed's exact backstory. He's now up in Wyoming. But they hired this dude named Reed, and he's one of the biggest whiskey nerds that I have ever met. Dude knows so much about stuff. He got a degree from somewhere in Scotland, blah, 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 blah. And so, total whiskey nerd. Got him in. They started, initially they wanted to do, he came on because they promised him that he was going to get to do whiskey. Of course, when you start making a whiskey, hey, Jimmy, what do most whiskey distilleries start selling at the very beginning because they don't have anything that's aged?
They source it?
Or
Gin or vodka?
Gin or vodka, exactly, or moonshine. You start selling unaged spirits,
White
and
Dog,
so
yeah.
Deep Ellum starts selling unaged. Like they have probably 18 different kinds of flavored vodka, and that was the majority of the distilling. But Reed came on to run the distillery because he was going to get to make his whiskey, and so he starts making his whiskey. This thing is, I believe, this is 3 years old. Okay. I'm pretty sure this is the only release, and I don't know if they're going to do it again.
Yeah, because this was bottled, it says right here, New Year's Eve in 2020.
Yeah. And so they bottled it. They finally got it out. I think it's delightful.
Odd time to bottle something. What are
Yeah.
you doing on New Year's Eve? I'm bottling whiskey.
Everyone drinks whiskey on New Year's Eve.
That's crazy.
Wait.
So they did they got it out, and then Reed wound up leaving. And they never really, they replaced like the functionality of his job with some people, but
Yeah.
I don't know if they got another whiskey nerd in there, and I don't know if they are going to move forward with it. The other thing that happened was Deep Ellum Brewery sold, the Deep Ellum company sold Deep Ellum Brewery. So
Right.
Deep Ellum Brewery
It's
is
the people that
now-
own Monster, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
sold that. Yes, and hey, congratulations, good for you. I'm very happy for you. Now they have a distillery with no brewery attached to it, but they're just kind of a vodka company. And so I don't know, maybe they'll make more. Who knows? It won't be this. This is very like if you ever see a bottle of this, just realize you'll probably never see another bottle of it ever again.
Limited.
Yeah, it's unbelievably limited.
And once
So-
again, I'm opening another bottle on this show.
yeah, but you're not gonna sell it. Like
And
it's
I wasn't going to. It had been sitting there a while.
And
It wasn't
I'm-
one of those that I was saving for a special occasion. It just hadn't been opened.
I mean, honestly, the whole I don't want to open it, blah, blah, blah. And that's not you, but anyone who sort of feels that way. The only reason to keep something not open is if literally I might sell that later.
Right.
If you go to the store and you're doing the whiskey hunting thing and, you see your Weller Antique.
Right.
And you buy it, you could very well just let's not open that one in case I want to flip it for a different whiskey later, or I'm going to sell it on the secondary market, or like that kind of thing. Otherwise, like this
It doesn't like the air does not hurt it like wine.
No,
Ever.
In fact, we
Never.
had an episode about the secondary market where people resell open bottles.
Really?
I'd say
Which seems like a big trust factor to me.
Yeah,
that
you didn't drink
that's
from the
exact-
bottle, right?
Or that what's on the label is actually in the bottle, right?
I would, yeah. There's an element to that. I buy opens all the time. Like,
Yeah.
like the ones. Here's what I buy on the secondary market: Grayson,
Right.
and
Your own whiskey,
open
right?
bottles. Because I don't. If let's say I have this of Grayson,
Right.
and this whole, let's just make it nice and easy. This is $100 bottle, and I have this much left. I'm not going to charge $30 for that because the $100 the bottle unopened is $100. But I'll give you $10, $15 if you want to sell me this much Grayson, because I like Grayson and I like that's a value to me. I'll give you $20. I'll give you $20 for this much Grayson. 100%. If this is a $100 bottle, I will happily give you $20 for a third of a bottle of Grayson. But I'm not going to give you $35.
A third
I'm not
of the-
going to
of
give
the
you
price tag.
$50. It's not going. It doesn't work that way. Like you drive the car off the lot. You instantly, when you open it, you instantly lose.
Are you
value.
giving him $30 for his bottle
I
of
want that
Grayson?
bottle.
All right.
I want that bottle because I don't have anything here.
Okay,
I'm staying in Dallas for a while. I don't have anything.
Right.
All right. Well, yeah, there you go. Now I got to bring another bottle up here.
That'll last him up.
All right. Thank you, sir. I
That's
appreciate
fun.
doing business.
Oh, I'm so glad to have this.
This is the new one.
Okay.
Yes, this is the 2A. So
we'll move on to that quickly, but we thought we would at least start with.
Sorry.
Anyway,
this. No,
I'm not sharing this.
No, you're like, I just bought it. I'm no longer
Here's
sharing this.
here's to whiskey that may never happen again in a lot of different ways.
Lots of different ways
Cheers,
for a
y'all.
future episode. Okay, I feel like we've really buried the lead. We're sitting here talking about a distillery that doesn't exist.
Wow.
What do you think?
That's good.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Yeah. It makes me want to know what he's up to in Wyoming. Yeah. Like I'm like, dude, Reed, I might need some of your whiskey. Reed, if you're paying, send me a bottle.
That's a shame. It's a shame that they're not making this anymore. That's really nice.
It's delightful. Yeah, it's real straightforward. It's an Irish style. It's triple distilled, so like Irish style. And it's really easy drinking. It's very. What's the proof on this? What, like 94?
98, I think.
49% alcohol by 98.
Okay, right on. Yeah,
I like how it's written on there, handwritten. This too.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's sexy.
That might have been. Let me see. Oh, that is my handwriting. I did do that one. I screwed up the 2A, but yes, that is my.
Oh, because that's the one I haven't. I've been at the last 2 bottlings, and I trying to put a label on stuff gives me anxiety. As like, I will be happy to write on the labels, and so I have 2 bottles at home that are my handwriting from the first 2 batches. Yeah.
So
cool.
Yeah, my when we were doing the bottling, what I decided to, the ones that I decided to keep, kind of every time we do a batch, these are the ones that I'm going to pull out. It's my birthday, Sarah's birthday, Becca's birthday, and Declan's birthday, as far as like the bottle numbers. And so those are the ones that when they're 21, I'm going to give them this big old pile
bottle
of whiskey that all have their birthdays on it.
Sarah's under 21?
Yeah, well.
That's a weird other story.
I know. That's not
Moving
correct.
on. Okay.
I'm no DiCaprio.
So, no, wow. Topical. Speaking of topical, so I went.
Hey!
Here's what we call a segue. You ready for this? So, this time around, I knew you were coming on the show. So, I revisited the last time you were on the show. And I just put that, it's been on the Vocal platform, it's been on Spotify, but it hadn't been on YouTube. So, I literally loaded it up yesterday and I'm rewatching. And we started that interview. I didn't realize it'd been a year. It's been almost a year since you've been here because we started that talking about the Oscar slap. And I was like, I don't know why I thought the last time you were here it had been sooner than that. It just seemed like, okay, it was a few months ago, March. And we started that interview as I was rewatching part of it with the Oscar slap. And I'm like, it's almost Oscar season again. I was like, it's been a year and like, what a great year for you,
Yeah, not bad.
Not bad.
I had a good year. That's wild. We watched it. We were together for the Oscars.
Yeah, we were.
We were hanging out, not watching the Oscars.
Right.
And all of a sudden my phone started blowing up.
I bet.
And I was like, I think we should turn on the Oscars.
That's amazing.
It was, wow. Well, yeah, not a bad year. I mean, I had a fun time. So shortly after I left y'all, I did a play in New York. And then while I was doing it, I booked this TV show, Shrinking. And
Because we
shot it all
didn't talk
summer.
about Shrinking on the, and I didn't know if it had happened and
no.
you just couldn't talk about it yet, or it wasn't a thing yet.
I don't think it was a thing yet. I don't think
Okay.
I knew anything about it yet because
Okay.
I would have been here before we started Jane Anger, which is the play I did off Broadway, and it was during Jane Anger that I auditioned for Shrinking.
Gotcha.
And then we shot it all summer, and then we did Jane Anger again. And now I'm here in Dallas directing a play.
That's
at Town
awesome.
Players.
So when just real quick, when you auditioned, was it a I don't know. How invited were you to audition? Was it kind of like, hey, we love you. Here, don't mess this up and you have a role? Or was it kind of like, no, I got to go in, I got to beat out like 3 or 4 people and just to make sure
it's a good question. And I don't actually know.
Okay.
I think it was more the former. I didn't really, what I have learned since is that my reps, and I think this is kind of, I think this is sort of customary. My reps tried to get them to offer it to me. They tried to say, he's not going to audition. You have to offer it to him. Of course, I didn't know that.
Right.
I would. There's some things that I would say, I'm not auditioning for that. I would consider it if you offered it to me, but I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna audition for that.
Sure.
Sometimes because it's just like so much work, or it's something that you can just look around and see that I can do, But this I absolutely would have happily auditioned if I'd heard about it. But I think they do that just to see, like why not? Why not try? it's not going to lose you the job. They're not going to be offended usually because it's not coming from me. It's coming from they know that. They know it's not coming from me.
Right.
So I don't know. I think I had a leg up. I think that they were interested in me, but I didn't really know at the time how close I was, or if I really was in a good stead with them, because I didn't know anybody. I didn't know anybody.
You had no connection to any?
That was literally one of my questions was there anybody involved with this that you had worked before, or just run in the same circles with, or had known it all involved?
No. Right before I started, I found out that someone on the writing staff had written a pilot I had done.
Okay.
This guy, Brian Gallivan. So I knew him.
Yep.
And that was it.
Wow.
But I didn't know I knew him. I didn't know that he was on it. And he didn't write the pilot. He didn't cast me.
Right.
But my name is Brian in the show. And he's, I think he's like the gay writer in the writer's room. And they were like, well, this is a gay character. Let's call him Brian.
Let's call him Brian.
And so I was like, I don't know Bill Lawrence. I don't know Brett Goldstein. I don't know Jason Segel. I don't know any of these people.
Right.
I'm just auditioning. I've never worked for Apple. I worked for Warner Brothers a lot, who produced the show. But I didn't, So I made this tape kind of, blindly in my room with Ryan, and we sent it off, and then I forgot about it. I've gotten really good about doing that, like make an audition, send it away, and then forget about it.
Put it in the universe and let it go, right?
Let it go. And sometimes it'll pop up and be like, hey, whatever happened with that? Well, a month goes by, and my agent calls, and they're like, well, we have some feedback on Shrinking. I was like, oh, okay, what is it? And they're like, well, they're not going to have you screen test. And I was like, oh, okay, bummer. And they're like, because you got the job, which is the thing agents love to do. They love to do the bait and switch like
right.
that. They try to make it sound like bad news, and then it's good news. So I got it. And then I still had never met anybody.
Wow.
And I really thought that I would have to at least have a chemistry read with Jason Segel. We played best friends.
Yeah.
But no, they didn't feel that was necessary. So I go out to LA, and then I'm not really in the first episode. In the first episode,
You're not, right.
You sort of see me, and you're like, who's that guy? And I think he says, who's that guy? He's my best friend. Let's run. It's like, what? He's best friend? He's
it's the gas station, right? Or whatever,
I'm pumping gas. So all you know about me from the first episode is that I drive a gas-powered car. That's literally all you know. And so I got to LA. We did a table read, and I didn't have anything to say. I was like, here I am sitting at a table in front of all of the executives from Warner Brothers and Apple. Harrison Ford's over there, Jason Segel's over there, and I have nothing to say. I'm
How
just sitting
awkward.
Here. It was so weird. But Bill Lawrence, the creator, the boss who created Scrubs and Ted Lasso and Cougar Town,
Right.
He did me the coolest thing. He did the best solid. When it got to that scene, because there was no intros, because it was like, these people need no introduction. So it wasn't like we went around the room and we're like, oh, I'm Michael, I play Brian. No, there was none of that. So at that point I was like, well, I didn't even get to say my name. And so we just started. And when we got to that scene, Bill was reading the stage, he sort of narrating the afternoon, and he was like, "Oh, this is great! We've got this series regular who doesn't have anything to say in this episode, but he's here with us because that's how great this show is. It's Michael Urie, and this is what he's about to do. He's about to be pumping gas." And he looked at me through.
Ready, go.
He gave me the floor, and so I stood up and mimed pumping gas, and I got a huge laugh.
That's great.
And it was so great. I will never forget it.
That almost leaves more of an impression
That's
than had
amazing.
you had something to read in the episode, right?
Absolutely, because I could have screwed that up.
Right.
Like this was like free joke.
Yeah.
He just handed me like a free.
Here's your platform.
So cool. And I will. And then I told him about it later. And then we were doing some panel, and he brought it up. This panel for like the critics or something.
Oh, nice.
He brought it up, but he gave me all the credit. He was like, and Michael did this hilarious thing where he pumped gas, and I was like, dude, you gave that to me.
Right.
Really sweet. He's a really good guy. I mean, he is the real deal, and I feel very lucky to be part of this show. It's crazy. I mean, I never. These are some big dogs, and I just pinch myself.
And you're
And
with
this
them.
is so.
Yeah.
No, and it's been so great. And for those of you that have been living under a rock that are listening and watching and haven't put put on Apple Plus TV, I guess, Apple TV Plus, I guess is the official
Apple
TV Plus, which is really interesting because I started, as I sat down to watch the first episode, I was thrilled for you. I remember when I saw there was like a jumping on trampolines kind of mini teaser the first time, and just saw your big smile on that, and I was so excited. And then I got to thinking about this because I tell people all the time that I think some of the most quality work, whether it's movies or series, all come. It's anything Apple does. And I was like, whether it's, Coda winning, Best Picture last year. I loved Severance earlier this year.
Yeah.
The Morning Show, We Crashed, I thought was a great series with Jared Leto.
Yeah.
The Shrink Next Door I thought was good. Emancipation, like just goes on and on. So it just seems like you Ted Lasso, like this is quality when you already see that on there. I feel
they have a real thing going on.
Yeah, they absolutely do.
And their shows sort of all fit together.
Yeah.
In a way that like not everyone pulls that off. HBO does that, but not anyone else really does. I feel like the networks used to do that, but like the broadcast networks, but they're not really.
And I feel like the other streaming services are they're just throwing such a wide net that some things are great quality and some things are kind of like thrown together. And
Well,
they definitely have a standard to what they do.
I was having a conversation with Brandon, my partner on Grayson. They own the production company that makes Schitt's Creek, and so they've got all of their series. They're based in Canada and all their series and whatever. But we were just sort of discussing just TV in general, and I brought up Shrinking, and he's like, oh man, Apple TV, it takes a lot for them to say yes, and they put everything behind it when it is a yes, and it's like the opposite of Netflix.
Yeah.
And if Netflix, he's like, dude, if you ever have a pilot that you want to go get done, and you actually get an opportunity and get it out there, and it's really quality, and you go and you have a conversation with Netflix and they say yes, walk out of the room because they're gonna throw like $100,000 at you and hope it goes well, and that's it.
Yeah.
And then bury it, and then
and nobody can find it because there's so much stuff.
You because it wasn't obviously
Well, that's the other great thing about Apple is they feel like they do such a great job of like cross promoting their things, whether it's the teaser right before each episode or there was some other movie that was coming out, because as I was watching the first 3 episodes of your show, there was something else. I'm like, well, that looks good too. Like there's nothing I see from trailers from them that I go, that looks kind of like crap. It's like, that's awesome. So has that been like a cool experience to work with?
Yeah.
And because it was all network TV stuff before now, right? TV wise?
Yeah, for me, I mean, I did a movie for Netflix, a Christmas movie for Netflix.
Oh, that's right.
Which was great. Really great. I mean, but Christmas, a Christmas movie is like a totally different. That's like
a series here.
That's like its own genre with like a whole cross section of people and that was cool though, because I hadn't been in anything like that. So I think a lot of people had never seen me before. So that was. But this is like a whole, it's a whole new. But I worked with done a lot of network stuff.
Yeah.
I also feel like this is the first, really. I feel like I've sort of grown up here, like doing this show. This is sort of like an adult show, and I'm playing like a fully 3-dimensional character.
Absolutely.
And I have done that before on stage, and even in some movies. But on TV, it's been a lot of like great comedy or sort of whimsical
caricature.
Yeah, more like character driven, 6 inches off the ground kinds of shows.
Yeah.
Good Wife and Younger. They're kind of like Modern Family. They're like they're, of course, Ugly Betty is very whimsical.
Yeah.
It's sort of like and this is very funny, but it's real, and like it goes to some dark places.
It's the thing that the explanation or like description that I keep giving people when I'm talking about this is Ted Lasso. Is like, it feels like Ted Lasso. No, it's not about sports. No, it's not Jason Sudeikis with a funny mustache.
Right.
But it is absolutely incredibly serious situations that are approached in a very human and funny way. Because there's a lot of us that the way that we deal with stuff is through humor.
Right.
And it feels like it lives there. Yeah. Like it feels like man, with your character, with Jason's character, like you see Jason Segel make this joke because he doesn't know anything else to do at that moment, and it's just beautiful.
Yeah. It's funny and heartbreaking at the same time.
It absolutely is. And I even wrote, so I was taking notes as I've been watching the show. And it's like cleverly charming in a heartbreaking way. It does have this, and Nico said that so well, because do you want to give everybody the synopsis of the show that haven't plugged in yet? Yeah.
Yeah, it's about it's a show about grief. It's Jason plays Jimmy, who is
that's why it's a great show, because the lead character's name's Jimmy. That's
and he's dealing with the death of his wife. His wife died a year prior to the beginning of the show, and he has a young daughter, and he is on his way to rock bottom or already there. And when the show begins, he's basically fed up with his work, and he decides that he's not going to just sit, listen, and ask his patients how things make them feel. He's going to tell them what to do, and which is a very unorthodox thing to do in mental health treatment. If for anyone who's not in that's not what they do. In fact, when my therapist watched the show, I asked what she thought, and she said that was what she said. She was like, I thought you were wonderful, and that Jason's character was unethical, and that's like all she said.
Really?
I was like, oh, okay. We won't be going there.
But that's the huge reveal
crazy.
in episode 1, because you don't know that's what he does for a living, right? You just see this guy at just rock bottom, and just obviously
he's a mess.
He's a mess. And then to walk in, you kind of think he's going into therapy until he sits down and he's in front of another. You're like, oh no, you shouldn't be helping anybody right now.
Yes, exactly. And then this unorthodox way of working does help people.
Absolutely.
And then it doesn't sometimes.
Yeah, right.
And then it does other times. And so it's really like, but at its core, like Ted Lasso, and like a lot of great TV shows, it centers on this one guy, and it's all the people in his life and how they all interact with each other, love each other, hurt each other, help each other. And what I love most about the show, I would say, is that there's no two characters that are the same. And for me, on a TV show, that's when you get the greatest cocktails, to use appropriate, although you don't do cocktails in here. Anyway, you put any two characters together and sparks fly.
Yeah.
That's something that I like. I am always like, when can I do a scene with that person?
Oh, that's cool.
When can I have a scene with them? And what would that be like? And it kind of writes itself by the time. I mean, I shouldn't say that. Writers don't like that, but
right.
but it's sort of like you put those two characters together and let's see what happens.
Right.
Let's see what they do. Let's see how they talk. And not that there is a lot of improv on the show because Jason and Jessica Williams is an incredible improviser, but they kind of, if you set it up right and it's cast right and it's written right, then you get to play, and that's what we get to do.
That show description was brought to you by Richard's Rainwater.
Well done.
Which is our new water sponsor.
Richard's Rain.
It's delicious.
It is the therapist's water.
I knew a guy named Joel Rainwater.
That was actually his last name?
Yeah. Joel, isn't that a great last name?
That is a great last name. Like, you should
Joel
be a
Rainwater.
race car driver or something.
We went to
with
high
that
school
name.
together. He was a great actor. He's a professional actor now. He's
Nice.
great.
That's crazy.
Awesome.
It was funny. You were talking about how there's no two characters that are the same. And even just 3 episodes into the show, you think everybody already knows each other, and they don't, because there's the scene right in there that the next door neighbor, Liz, runs into Harrison Ford's character, and that you realize this is the first time.
Well, they were acquainted. They met each other at a Super Bowl party or something.
Right, or something
really
like that.
Know each other.
But that's when I'm realizing, we haven't seen these two together yet, because you just start watching a show and you think, okay, I think everybody's interacted with everybody by this point. You guys are having the divorce party and things, and then it was like, oh my gosh, okay, what's this dynamic going to be as well?
Which is why I cannot wait for you and Harrison Ford to get
Okay,
together.
I have so many questions about this. You're working with Han Solo.
Yeah.
What? I mean, what is it
Crazy,
like
right?
just to walk into the room and be like, I'm sitting next to Indiana Jones? I mean, just is there a bit of an intimidation factor there? Or just
there was a moment where I was I was in Hamlet. This is don't worry, this isn't just about me. But I was in Hamlet. And
you're sitting here, Harrison, as you can talk about you. Go ahead.
when we were doing Hamlet, I realized that the text of Hamlet is everywhere. And you don't realize until like you're immersed with the language all day, every day, that like so many things that are in Hamlet are all over life. It's all over the place. And I remember saying this to the guy who played Claudius. His name's Alan Cox. He's an amazing actor. He was playing Claudius. His dad's Brian Cox. So he's like, he basically grew up Hamlet, And I said that to him when we were doing it. I was like, isn't it crazy how like Hamlet's everywhere? And he was like, yeah, it's true. It's like everything's either Hamlet or not. And I was like, yeah.
Wow.
Which is like obviously ridiculous, but also like a really big idea. And this is what I learned working with Harrison Ford. Everything is either Harrison Ford or it's not, especially in LA, because LA, you can't look in any direction without seeing a reference to Indiana Jones or Star Wars.
It's right.
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
All the time, everywhere. And to the extent that one of my very first conversations with him before we'd shot together, before we really had met, we shook hands, but we hadn't really met. He was on a bicycle, sort of like tooling around the lot like a kid, and he was kind of like playing on his bike, talking to some of the wardrobe people, and I was like, okay, this is I'm gonna go talk. I'm gonna go put myself in this conversation. And I went over, and he was like, "You must be Brian." He didn't know my name yet.
Does he still think your name is Brian?
No, he knows my name. When I saw him at the premiere,
that's a big deal.
He was like, Michael. But
he's on the Christmas card list.
He was like, I was standing there talking to him on the lot, outside at Warner Brothers on the lot, where our trailers were. So all of our trailers were lined up. And the trailers are, this company's called Star Wagons, and Lyle Waggoner from the Carol Burnett show created this company. That's what's called.
Really?
So it's Wagons, Waggon, because his name is Waggoner.
Yeah.
So this company, Star Wagons, which is where most of the trailers on movie sets come from, was made by this guy, Lyle Waggoner. And I have been in many Star Wagons trailers over the years. And I've been on many sets where there were Star Wagons trailers. And I'm standing there on the set, on the lot, with Harrison Ford, and there's a Star Wagons trailer, about 30 feet behind him. And I look up, and I, for the first time ever, realized that the logo for Star Wagons is Star Wars. It's just like Star Wars.
Yeah, it is.
And
I've seen those.
Oh my God, it's Star Wars. And he's right here. And and then I realized like that font was invented for Star Wars, and it's
everywhere. Yeah.
So like, there's that element of working with him.
Yeah.
That's like the larger than life. And then there's he's a real character. I mean, he likes to pretend to be cranky. He has a designated golf cart that's called the Captain that is for him.
That's awesome.
It must be souped up because when I rode with him in it, I've never been in a golf cart that goes that fast. But then when you get on set and it's time to work, it's like working with any other actor. He really does approach it like any other actor. He really is thinking about it like, what do I want? What's the relationship? How do I move around this space? It really is like, like working with any other actor that I have worked with. That's great, you know, and he's really great.
It's so interesting to watch him in this. I don't think I've ever seen him in a series.
No,
So you think of these big, iconic, huge movies and stuff, and so he's just fantastic in everything he does. But I feel like it's a real new way for all of us that have been growing up watching him forever and being these larger than life characters that these icons, is him playing this kind of cranky old guy, but watching in a series how this guy's going to evolve as well. I'm like really looking forward to as this thing plays out.
He's almost so big that you can't even fathom how big he is. Like it's like
and how long he's been that big.
Yeah,
our whole lives.
Like our entire existence, he's been. It's like him and Tom Hanks. Like that's it. Like it's those two. They have done everything of significance in our artistic society.
Yeah.
One of the two of those people were in it, and like, good night.
I know, it's wild.
Yeah, absolutely. You told this story the other day about being in the car with Harrison and with Jason.
Yeah.
Rolling through Burbank. I would.
Oh gosh,
It's the.
she has some interesting looks.
I love the description.
Oh, it's crazy.
Like the thing is when you're on a movie shoot and you're in a car scene, you're probably on a trailer and there's probably a ton of lights everywhere and everybody can see everything going on it because you're shooting a movie, so it has to be good lighting so everybody can see everything that's happening in the car. And so y'all are in this glowing orb going through Burbank with Han Solo and the dude from How I Met Your Mother.
Yeah.
And
Wait, what are you riding in?
A car on a process trailer. So it's called a process trailer, and I don't know why.
Okay.
But they put a car on a low trailer.
Okay.
And they soup it up with lights and camera. They put the camera.
Is this to like shoot inside the car scene?
It's to shoot, and to make it look like we're driving.
Right,
So
okay.
there's nothing behind it.
But you're not actually on the ground. You're being pulled on top of a trailer.
We're on a
Gotcha.
and so somebody else is driving, and Jason's pretending to drive.
Got it.
And we're lit up like a Christmas tree. I mean, it's like a parade.
Yeah.
Going through Burbank at night, and like people are.
It's the light parade from Disneyland. I like the right.
It's the electric light parade, and we're holding up traffic, and people are driving by, and people in LA are totally used to it. And sometimes they get annoyed, they honk, but then this time they look at the car and there's Harrison Ford and Jason Segel in the front seat, and we were driving by and there's a couple of whoops and hollers. Somebody was like, "I love you, Jason," and Jason gave a slow burn to Harrison. Like, did you hear that? And Harrison was like, "That's really hard for me to hear." And then he goes, "This is weird." He goes, "'Cause that was my mother." And we were like, "Oh." And then he goes, I didn't say this part. Then he goes, "That happened to me once before with Alec Guinness." And I was, my first thought was like, when did you work with Alec Guinness?
Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Come on.
I
oh my God.
You're thinking all Shakespearean things, right? Because that's what he was before that, right?
also at that point, to me, he was Harrison. Like
Right.
it's like you sort of forget. Like, oh wait, that's the guy.
You're on Solo.
Yeah.
He drives the Millennium Falcon. Like,
Right.
you kind of forget that. And then we kept driving, and somebody else, a man's voice was like, "Ooh, woo!" And I was like, "That sounds like a gay guy. That's probably my fan."
that was your fan
And
club.
Harrison goes, "I've got gay fans." And I said, "Yeah, I know, because of Working Girl."
Well done. Nice.
But the other funny thing that happened is that I was like, "Hey guys, what's a process?" I was like, "Why do they call it a process trailer?" Thinking they both. I mean, Harrison's probably been in millions of process trailers,
Right.
And neither of them knew. And he was like, "Oh, I got to show you this cool process trailer we just used on Indy." And he sort of told us about a motorcycle chase that he did in the Indiana Jones movie that he just shot. And he pulls out his phone, and he's like, "Oh, it was great. I got a picture here somewhere. Well, look at that one." And then he's like looking through, and he's like, "Where is it? Damn it, where is it?" And then he's like, hands it to Jason. He's like, "How can I find something from July?" And Jason's like, "Oh, well, I think you have to go back." "Oh, wait. And then we roll, and we have to like shoot. And then he gets back to it. Never found it. He never found
Between
it.
takes, it's
All
trying to find
night,
his
all night. And I'm really interested. I want
Right.
to see this.
I wanna see the process trailer.
Motorcycle. Never saw it. No idea. I'll see the movie, and I'll be like, maybe that's it. I have no idea.
So funny.
Very stupid. But that's when you're like, oh yeah, he's an 80-year-old man.
That's been doing this his entire life,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That started as a carpenter.
So how did the day end?
Oh yeah. So
This
then,
is where I'm leading
Oh,
to.
man.
so we had a great, and we had an amazing time. And at one point, Harrison's like, "I used to have a house up there. It was a former ranger station." And he tells us this whole story about how he, like, when he was a carpenter, he rebuilt the house and.
He's gonna have more stories than anybody,
Oh my
right?
gosh.
Like,
Yes, so it was like a real opportunity for us, Jason and me, to like get Harrison time because we couldn't leave. We were trapped in this car. We were stuck in this car all night, and it was really, really lovely. And because he's always available, but you just don't always end up talking to each other, or he goes back to his trailer for whatever reason or whatever. So at the end of the night, we were done, and like you could feel it. The whole crew, you could sort of feel like everybody was like, that was a special night. We all got to go drive around Burbank with Harrison Ford, and it was special. And we were leaving, and we were done, and we were saying goodbye. I think Jason and I were getting our mics off, and we sort of were walking back to the trailers together. And I was like, "God, that was so fun. I'm sorry it's over." And Jason goes, "Yeah, aren't we lucky?" And I was like, I'm getting emotional just thinking. I get goosebumps just thinking about it. He's a movie star. in his own right.
Right.
He's the executive producer, creator of this show and the star. And he's worked with lots of big, I've never worked with anybody as big as Harrison Ford.
Right.
Harrison's still a big deal to him. Working is still a big deal to him. Getting any job is hard as an actor. Yeah. And this one, every job is special, and we are lucky. And that was a really lucky day that
it's so cool to hear that, specifically from somebody like him, because you always hope at some point people just don't take this for granted, or it's just another thing, or even people you come across where, God forbid, it becomes annoying to them of and that happens in this world all the time with less accomplished people. And that's probably why these people have had fantastically long careers that keep doing amazing stuff, is because
why those other people are less accomplished.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And because they do love the work and they don't take it for granted, and they know that each of these moments are something special to create something. Even just the power to think that, like, the impact this 3 episodes in, the things I've thought about just in my own personal life or whatever, like watching these characters. And like you said, it's this show with so much depth. There's a lot of like whimsical stuff. And I have to tell you this because I've always loved watching you work, but there is such a joy to what you do. And I don't know if it's just because I know you personally, but this character has just been so much fun to watch you play. Because there's times I'm like, that's my, like, it's when do I see Brian and when do I see you, and you do. There's just so much joy in it. And I just love watching you work. But to know you're creating something that's impacting people on a real emotional level in their living rooms, like, there's some real power and responsibility to that.
Yeah. And it's a show about grief. Like, that's, this is what I think is really cool about this show and TV in general, is like, you don't have to tell a story that's about everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Like sometimes like, there's an urge to be like, well, make sure this is about everybody. Like, in the theater, we do that a lot. In the theater, it's like, well, how is this about everybody? How, you have to, somehow it has to end up being a show about everyone. And occasionally you get a TV show that's about everyone, but this is not a show about everyone, but it is about something that everyone has been touched by, which is grief. And especially after the last 3 years we've all been dealing with grief. And now we're all talking about mental health in a way that we never did before.
Absolutely.
And so, like, what I think is beautiful about what I'm so proud of is, like, this is a show about, like, a couple of white guys, a black woman, a black guy, gay guy, older empty nesters, and a kid. Like it's just like a few people, not everybody, a few people, and they're all dealing with grief, just like everybody deals with grief. And I think that is like so beautiful. And yes, a responsibility to like deal with grief in a certain way, but because we're specific people dealing with grief, we don't have to get it right, because they don't get it right.
Right.
And you'll take whatever you need from it and discard the rest. But human beings are, they're messed up, and these characters are messed up.
There is a relief to watching somebody else be messy, and you're like, oh, I feel a little better about me right now.
Totally,
in some weird way, but because especially, maybe not so much in like TV and movies, but you think about social media and stuff, so much things come across polished, right? Yeah. This is all perfect. Here's what a filter is. And there is something watching somebody deal with the thing the wrong way and just go, nope, because I would have done. Even in your character, having had friendships before where I've had people ghost me, this is where I connected with your character really quickly.
It's weird, right?
To where I've been accused of being an overly positive person at times in my life, to where people roll their eyes at me. And so maybe this is why, I know, shocking. Coach Jimmy and his daily affirmations, where I get, like, maybe that's why I connected so quickly in this, because I've had people that have just not given me an explanation on why don't we talk anymore? Did I do something? Like, that whole questioning, and to watch your character go through that.
Oh, yeah.
And then to be told, yeah, I just wanted to be sad and I can't do that around you. Yeah. It was just like, for me, I was like, okay, I get that, and so, and to see where that is messy and it isn't right and wrong, you kind of empathize with both guys, because why this guy just needed to be miserable for a little bit. Yeah. And why his friend just wanted to do anything he could to try to drag him out of this hole, And so it was really interesting dynamic.
Yeah. For me, it's the where it kind of sits and the fact that it's happening right now. Like you speak about the last 3 years of this pandemic that we're still dealing with. But it's I don't know how many conversations I've had with people that during the pandemic, with like, you have all the time in the world to consume whatever you want to consume. And you want to know what I watched during the pandemic? I watched Ted Lasso and I watched Schitt's Creek. That was it. Because I can't handle anything serious right now.
Right.
The world is collapsing. Yeah. Everything is going to hell. The last thing I'm going to do right now is start The Sopranos. Or like, this is the moment for The Wire.
Right.
To like absolutely not.
Yeah.
But the beautiful thing about shrinking is that it's sort of this. It's what we should be feeling coming out of the pandemic, and just sort of everything that it's kind of this release, but it's through the lens of Ted Lasso. And I mean, I'm sure a lot of that's Brett and just his approach and you know,
and Bill.
Yeah, Brett and Bill. Yeah, absolutely.
And with the Jason Segel special sauce, which is, you know, he specializes in playing people who step in it.
Yeah.
He's always been so good at playing people that are great and fun and mean well, but they end up being at their worst at the wrong place at the wrong time, and he's so good at it. And so like that mixture is just, it's great.
It's so well timed. Like, and I mean, I know, had the pandemic happened, he never would have written this. They never would have come up with this. This is directly cut because of the pandemic. I totally get that.
Yeah.
But like, just the timing of it, and it feels like it's almost, for me, it's almost acting as the transition back to normalcy. Like, I feel like at the end of Shrinking, I'll be able to be like, okay, maybe I can actually start The Sopranos now. I feel like it's kind of like we're kind of getting over it. Let's incorporate our grief back into our sort of real life and kind of deal with it and move on that way.
Have you never watched The Sopranos?
No, I've never watched The Sopranos.
Okay, well, I did watch it during the pandemic.
Oh my God, why?
Well, I can't remember why I started it. I think I was out of town or something. It is way better than anyone said. Like,
awesome.
Like it took me, 20 years to watch it too.
Yeah.
And I was like, no one told me. And yes, yet everyone told
you.
But
right.
no one told
and
me
I feel like
that good.
I feel like The Sopranos was the turn of what we know as these epic series.
Yeah.
Now, like
Prestige
that was
television.
kind of the first one. And ironically, I haven't watched it either. And I'm a diehard Mad Men guy, right? I watched it a couple times, and Matthew Weiner started on The Sopranos, and to not go back and watch it as well. But I was talking to somebody the other day about this. It was like The Sopranos, and then The Wire, and then these things that kind of popped up there. But I feel like it was the game changer.
It was.
That it was like,
I think it was too.
Doing series on like paid TV is just the same quality as doing a high budget motion picture, and I think that's what kind of started shifting now.
And James Gandolfini his performance as Tony Soprano is as good as like Nicholson in Cuckoo's Nest, or Meryl Streep in Sophie's Choice. Like,
everything, right?
Like it is that level of like I mean, he is that good.
The thing that I also loved that it did was it brought us back to appointment television, and the fact that if you were, and I remember all of this happening, annoyingly, I know how the damn thing ends because you couldn't get away from it.
Right.
I did too.
Like, I know how it ends.
But you know how it ends, but I did too, but you don't really, because
you don't have the context to deal with it.
Sure.
100%.
Yeah.
So, but the fact is, when the last season, probably the last 2 or 3 seasons were happening, that's all that people were, that's what you did on Sunday night. That was what it was.
Right.
And the fact is, I love the fact that Apple TV is doing the same thing.
Yep.
I really like the fact that I didn't spend this weekend watching your entire series so we could talk about the entire series and go for like, let's cover the entire story arc in one chat. Like, man,
me too.
You got 10 weeks to go through.
But
this.
it's fun.
Whatever.
Appointment TV, going back to that, is because you have a week to digest it, really think. Because when you binge something, when it all comes out at once, I don't think you appreciate each episode, and you have time to think about that week. And I think going back to shows that I was really, whether it was Mad Men, whether it was Breaking Bad, and living with those shows as they like that was 9 years of my life invested in these shows because you'd wait for the next week and then God dog it when like you had to wait to the next season and you're just waiting with bated breath. But I have appreciated about Apple. I really I love Severance earlier this year and it was the same thing.
So good.
Wait a week and like right now I'm like when season 2 you have the itch for season 2.
Gosh.
So
Being with Bill and Brett on a press tour and hearing how just mad people are for Ted Lasso.
Yeah.
Like drooling, rabid dogs for the.
they need their fix, right?
We did this panel for the Critics Association and the Television Critics Association, and I swear we were up there for maybe half an hour. There were at least 4 questions about Ted Lasso.
Oh, really?
None of which they answered because they couldn't say anything about it. There's a embargo. They can't say anything. There's not a premiere date. I think they're done shooting it, but it's not ready yet. And these critics would not give up.
Wow.
It was. But hey, that's great.
When how's Roy Kent?
He is so sweet.
Okay.
He is. You know.
I love me some Han Solo. Give me Roy Kent.
You know,
I'm one of the ones drooling for Ted Lasso. How is Roy Kent in real life?
He's really sweet, and his voice is actually really high. Did you know that?
Yeah. I've heard him on podcasts and
Yeah.
stuff. I'm like, oh
yeah,
my
yeah,
God.
yeah, yeah.
You're a
I did his
chipmunk.
podcast. I did his.
You're a Muppet.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
actually a Muppet.
And he's
Really? He's
kind of-
Kermit. Nice.
and he's really witty and really sweet.
Do you think that Roy Kent's voice will end up being more like Harrison Ford in this next season because of his experience?
Good question.
With
Well, when I do
drinking?
the impression, it's the same. It's only British. like someone told me today that my Harrison Ford sounds like Christian Bale as Batman.
A little.
Yeah.
I guess that's all, you know.
But it's not too far from that. I think it's semi-accurate though, for real.
Yeah, I mean, well, actually, I think Harrison has two. He has deep down, cranky old man, and then he's got screaming Han Solo, and he still does like the screaming Han Solo.
It's nice that he still has that range. That's
You know,
awesome.
it's that part where it's like, Han, can you reach my lightsaber? Yeah, sure. He still does that.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Are we supposed to be drinking?
Yeah,
we can see.
Do we need to?
Sure.
Well, should we tell me about something? What are you having? You guys are.
You know what?
The hazmat.
Let's do some hazmat and yeah. See, again, this is the type of thing that like this conversation could go on for 6 to 7 hours.
So here's a segue. I'll give you a small pour because I know you have rehearsal.
Yes.
Tell us more about why you're here in Dallas.
Yes.
you like that?
I'm. Sorry. Here.
I'm a professional interviewer.
I'm directing a wonderful world premiere comedy called Silver Foxes.
Okay.
It is by Stan Zimmerman and James Berg, who are a comedy writing partnership that has been together for decades writing for television. They wrote for Roseanne and The Nanny and Gilmore Girls.
Is this their first play?
It is their first play together. Stan's done some theater on his own, and I met him because he was we met doing, I can't even really remember, but basically he sort of became my go-to guy to punch up hosting scripts. When I would host stuff, I would go to him and be like, what's a better joke here? What can we say here? And we became pals. And he was like, I've got this play. I'd love to, get your thoughts on it. And I sort of came on as director, and we've been looking for a place to do it. And Uptown Players here in Dallas,
Good
Dallas's LGBTQIA theater company, has, decided to produce the world premiere. And we have this fabulous cast. And
I see is BJ Cleveland?
BJ's in it.
Dude, just a Dallas icon. BJ Cleveland. That's awesome, man.
The legendary
He
BJ
is,
Cleveland is one of the Silver Foxes. It's crazy that
awesome.
we grew up with him. I mean, we grew up watching him introduce cartoons.
Jay and the Superones, man.
And
he's been in he's worked in every, if you watch theater here.
If you do theater in Dallas and you haven't worked with BJ Cleveland,
then you don't really do theater.
You don't really do theater.
It was funny. I got to think when I saw it was with Uptown. The last musical I did in Dallas was with those guys, and it's just been
Which
cool.
one?
I did Dirty Rotten Scoundrels with them.
No
I had a
kidding.
blast. Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
And that was like right after I got back from New York.
You know who came by the rehearsal the other day? I don't know her new name, but Jen Passion.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah. And
Great.
She walked in and I was like, I know
you?
And they said her name, and she was like, you would know me as Jen Passion.
Another quad seer.
Yes.
Yep. And we kind of touched on that the last time you were here of this tiny little hole in the wall theater department that has turned so many people into different areas, both inside of performing in entrepreneurial worlds or whiskey or whatever. It's been really interesting.
Well, the theater, if you do theater, you're prepared to do anything because it's problem solving. And if you can problem solve and then do a live performance, either on or behind the scenes, on the stage or behind the scenes, then you can do anything.
It's so collaborative, which also helps in so many other areas of life. In fact, I have a hosting MC gig in Vegas next week, and I keep getting these big MC gigs because things where mics go out or things completely fall to shit. And they're like, oh, you didn't freak out at all. I was like, nope, that was just improv class. It's just yes and. They're like, oh, we've had hosts in here that have just lost their mind when things go wrong. And I was like, yeah, that never really crossed my mind. And I was like, things where like you're being prepared for another season of your life, but you don't realize it. Going back, you're like, oh, because this was what I kind of call hidden hours, whether it's in in a black box space or in a rehearsal or in improv things. This also serves you in other areas of life where things just go wrong or go left, and you just have to like make it work.
Yes.
Yeah,
it's also the idea of being uber prepared for a situation where you're pretty sure that you're just going to have the outline and you're just going to kind of deal with whatever happens once you get in it.
Oh yeah.
And
working on bullet points.
Your preparation is the only thing that's going to actually save you. Yep. And it's that type of thing. It's like it's being so rigid that you can ultimately be flexible.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
And that's not.
Is it like the jazz musician that's practiced their scales so much that then they can riff?
B school, man. Yeah. It's like there's the MBAs don't. You know who freaked out on the stage? Bunch of MBAs. They're the ones who freaked out because they were super prepared, and then when something went wrong, they didn't know how to deal with it. But we are super prepared, and then when something goes wrong, it's like, oh no, this is literally what we were expecting.
Yeah.
I don't know which mic is going to go out. I don't know which person is going to miss a cue. I don't know which piece of clothing is going to not come off when it needs to. Something's going to happen, and we're ready for it because this is the world that we came from and lived in and forever.
It's true.
Yeah. Isn't it great?
To theater.
To theater.
Cheers.
Michael, thank you for you have a crazy schedule right now, so we appreciate your time. But I'm so happy for you, man. Like just watching this, so you've been here, a year ago here, and then to watch all the amazing things that's happened this year. Like, good year on you, bro.
Thanks, man.
My favorite thing that you keep saying is that all of your friends are watching this show.
Yeah.
And
it's true.
Right. Yeah, totally. I mean, and yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you did Ugly Betty, we tuned in, watched the show, you blah, 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 blah. Man, I didn't find out you were even in Younger until way late. I've now seen it, but I had no idea. It's just sort of oh, what are you up to now? It's probably some play or whatever and yada yada. But this,
it speaks to it. It's cool. And I don't know if that's because it's better than anything I've been in before, or it just speaks to my friend group, my friends and acquaintances. But it is. I definitely feel a difference this time.
I think
this show.
Everybody, man. I think everybody's watching this. Even we did a conversation the other day up at a talk station here in town, and the hosts were like, yeah, we've been watching the show. I'm like, no, they're gonna keep watching the show. They're all in. They've totally bought in. And these are people that are not your friend group. This is they're in. And I feel like I've had people talk to me about it because they know that I know you. Yeah. And it's just oh man, I'm watching Shrink It. It's it's so cool. Good. Yeah. It's and amazing.
You touched on this earlier, with the topic of mental health right now. And I think that there's never been a flashlight this bright on it before. And just okay. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day about, specifically with men, about how therapy used to have this taboo to it. Oh, you're going to therapy. What's wrong with them? And now it's oh, good for you. It's never been so celebrated, specifically with men now. It's just cool. At least you're doing something. It's almost like going to the gym. Cool. You go to therapy. You're taking care of your body. You're taking care of your mindset.
Because it's just as important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's the logical next step from Ted Lasso. Literally. Yeah. It's Ted Lasso made it okay for everybody to nah, dude, guys have feelings. These are things. And now it's no, hey, maybe those guys should be in therapy. And this is what therapy actually does. Let's drag everyone into the way that you can actually approach your mental health instead of it just sort of being this nebulous thing that we just sort of fight through.
And you know, like I think there's also a common misconception that therapy isn't just big problems.
Right.
It's little problems, or it's ongoing nags. It's like, you know, and that was sort of for me what you know, I was always sort of like, well, I don't have any big problems. Why would I go into therapy?
Right.
And it's not, I don't go to therapy for the big problems. I go to therapy for all the million little problems. And sometimes I even think, am I boring my therapist? You know,
Right.
like, are these problems just boring? But
all those little things can break a dam.
Exactly.
Right. Or
Yeah.
the straw that broke the camel's back. All the little things, you know?
Something that Jason says, or I have heard him say in interviews, so it's okay that I'm repeating it, was in talking about therapy, was when he first started going to therapy, it was a former girlfriend that was encouraging him to. And he was very angry that she was encouraging him to. Mm-hmm. And when he finally did go, and immediately when he started, he realized she wasn't doing that because she felt superior to me or because, you know, she wanted to control me or challenge me or change me. She did because she loved me. Mm-hmm. And that was like and he told me that on set before I started therapy. I started therapy while we were doing the show.
Oh,
actually.
really?
Yeah, in part because of the show. And because I just, you know, I was like, I want to know more.
Right.
And he told me that story, and I was like, it was like the sweetest thing I'd ever heard, and it suddenly made a ton of sense to me.
That's awesome.
Did we?
We got to go.
Last time though, real quick, did we tell the story of my most favorite onstage mishap ever
No.
when we were here last time?
Can you do it in under 5 minutes?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
I told it a million times.
Yes, of course.
When Nico and I did Gypsy at Quad C.
Okay. Cool. We're going back to college days. So let's reset real quick. For those that don't know, the way the three of us know each other, we all went to a very small 2-year school here in Plano, at a tiny little theater department that did amazing work. That's how we all know each other.
Yada, yada. We did this show called Gypsy.
This little show called Gypsy.
Where I was in the
Broadway
chorus
musical.
who played the fat guy on the end, and Urie was, I don't even know, who were you?
I had
Doesn't matter.
even less to do than you
right.
did. But it was one of those shows where we all did everything. So like we were moving furniture, we were helping each other change clothes, we were playing lots of characters, we were pulling curtains, we were doing all of the
We're the
things.
set crew.
Yes.
Actors are set crew.
And the way that the show opened, Gypsy has one of the great overtures of musical theater. And we had a great band, and they were in this amazing band shell. And when the show started, the curtain, you would hear bum, 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 and then the curtain would go up and the band shell would move forward on a winch. It would like,
It was amazing.
it was so cool, so exciting. So Sean, our friend Sean Fernara, and I, we were backstage right at this moment every night, waiting to move our first pieces of furniture or whatever. And we would watch the curtain rise as the music played and as the band shell went down, because it was beautiful. It was really stunning to watch. And that was our ritual. We would do that every night. And one night we were in the back hallway behind the stage, before the show started, just hanging out with Nico, just, you know, shooting the shit, talking about whatever. And then when we heard the overture start, and Sean and I were like, oh, we're missing the thing. And Nico's like, what? And we're like, oh, well, this is... So during this moment of the show, Sean and I are backstage, right? And we listen to the overture and watch the curtain go up, and it's really, really beautiful. But we don't see you there. Where are you during that moment? And Nico's like, oh, I raised the curtain. I raised the curtain! And he realizes that he's the one who raises the curtain. And so that means it's not going up right now.
It's not going up right now.
And the band is playing, and maybe the winch is going, who knows? And he takes off running like I've never seen a person run before. And about that moment, down on the other side of the stage, Craig Erickson, who ran the wench, who is, you know, gotta be 100 by now.
Yeah.
He was like 70, 80 then. And he like comes out, you know,
Yeah, not to be messed with either.
don't
Yes,
mess with
no.
them. And Sean and I are like, I think we better go see what happens. And so we run backstage and we're watching. The band is playing.
Yeah.
In the dark, behind the curtain. And suddenly it's like, okay, here, it's going to go up. It's going to go up. And I'm like, it's going to go so fast. And it does move fast. down.
Oh no!
Nico pulls the wrong rope.
In your panic moment, you pulled the wrong one.
rope.
Bury the curtain into the stage like
billows.
6 to 7 feet.
Oh, it comes. The batten, the top batten is halfway down the proscenium. The curtain is billowing and billowing and billowing.
Because I'm just going.
And then
You're just going to commit to
pulling,
one
pulling.
to one rope at some point.
Yeah.
Either it's the wrong one.
And then he's like, and then I guess you notice, you're like, shit. And he starts pulling it the other way, and then it goes up, and then it goes so fast and so far that it hits the top of the building. Like you hear gong.
Yeah.
And then it moves forward, and we continue. But it is to this day, and I've been in some shows where things went wrong.
Yeah,
It
well-
is the greatest.
I've never
mishap.
heard this story,
Oh
but
my
that makes
gosh.
me so happy.
Isn't that great?
Okay, we gotta go.
Okay.
All right.
Thank
Michael,
you.
thank you for your time. Everybody, check out Shrinking on Apple TV Plus. And until next time,
Cheers, y'all.
Cheers,
Cheers, y'all.
Gotta
What a
go.
pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Sorry.